The Dangers in My Heart is a weird, hilarious, heart-wrenching and beautiful anime that has become one of the most underrated animes to have come out this year. Ichikawa is a middle school loner who fantasizes about murdering other people. More specifically, he wants to take the life of the idol of his class, Ana Yamada, who is a model and a giant that towers over the MC. Ichikawa is a certified Chunibi loner who doesn't belong to any friend groups. So during lunch, he goes off to spend some time in the library where he feels at ease. But unexpectedly, he walks into Yamada as she silently gouges down some snacks in that empty library. Is that what ASMR sounds like? All that Ichikawa can do now is observe what this otherworldly specimen is doing here in the library. But as he continues to watch over her antics, he quickly realizes that Yamada is a bit of an airhead. And so as Yamada starts coming to the library quite frequently, the two of them end up spending a lot of time together, and Ichikawa soon finds his murderous intents being replaced with an entirely different feeling altogether. The premise of this anime might not be the most exciting thing out there, but the reason it works so well is because of the way it tackles its story through its characters. Ichikawa excels at his observational skills. As any loner usually does, his perception skills allow him to look past the everyday bullshit of middle schoolers, which is the reason his straight man comedy works really well. He also has the weirdest solutions to every problem he's faced with. In the first episode, Yamada was being hit on by some playboy. Even after many attempts from Yamada to shut him down, he only got more and more aggressive with his approach. Ichikawa, who was seeing all of this from the sidelines, could easily tell what was going on. So in order to save Yamada from this sticky situation, he threw his bike at full speed down the street that hit the railing and went flying straight into the river. That's certainly one way to end a conversation. And as if he isn't crazy enough, on the other hand, you've got Yamada, who looks like a mature adult, but acts like a 4-year-old toddler. The Dangers in My Heart strikes that balance between comedy and romance without dragging out the story or becoming stale at any point, which is something only a handful of animes from the rom-com genre actually get right. Ichikawa's character is the best worst part of this anime. His edginess definitely makes him a standout protagonist in the sea of rom-coms with a nice guy main character. But the part of his character that says and does some extremely quirky, cringy and edgy things is what makes this anime so off-putting at first. Ichikawa was never written as a self-insert character. His pessimistic, dark and bleak approach to life can easily lead to people misunderstanding his character that certainly has more depth to him than being a quirky murder-loving edgelord. That is also the biggest issue that many people have with this anime. The fact that the protagonist, and quite frankly everyone else in this anime, is just too edgy and cringy to watch at times, was clearly enough to drive many people away from this anime at first glance. The author of The Dangers in My Heart had never really written anything aside from gag mangas for a decade straight before creating this rom-com series. So it's no surprise that the story initially was a bit awkward to read. This is the reason that after its first episode, the anime fell all the way down to a below average ranking of over 4000th place. The second episode of the series doesn't help much either in terms of promising that Ichikawa will eventually change his ways and grow out of his Chunibu habits. But it's only when you look past these initial problems in the story that the anime takes you on an unexpected adventure. There is a reason the manga has sold over 4 million copies in total, and it's because of just how great the story gets progressively. The same is the case with the anime. The story really picks itself up starting the second half of the third episode. After Yamada gets decked in the face by a basketball, things get a little too serious. That's when you first see Ichikawa's concern for Yamada's safety. Would he really be making such a pained expression from seeing someone he wants to murder actually get seriously hurt? Of course not, because in reality, this entire time, Ichikawa has been an unreliable narrator. Time and time again, he says some extremely edgy stuff, but his words and his actions never quite line up. He's always the one to call out the creepy behaviors of those backbenchers. He's the one who tries to handle the issues of others even at the cost of coming across as a cringy idiot. And he's someone who genuinely cares about Yamada. The reason Ichikawa acts the way he does in the first few episodes is made clear in the later parts of the story. As you go along watching the two of them doing the weirdest things every day, you soon realize that Ichikawa isn't some homicidal maniac middle schooler. He's just an awkward, self-conscious, dumb kid who thinks negatively about everyone way too much and lacks any self-confidence. I would argue that everyone else in this anime is way more unhinged and creepy than Ichikawa. But then again, can you really expect teenagers going through puberty to act like anything but rash idiots? The point is that the story, the characters, and the anime only get better and better with each episode. There is a clear distance between Ichikawa and Yamada at the start of the anime, but the story does an incredible job at bridging that distance. After every conversation, Ichikawa's attitude towards Yamada changes ever so slightly. His shy, awkward behavior slowly fade away and he grows into a character who was nothing like the Ichikawa from that first episode. And the same is the case with Yamada. The story never reads from the perspective of Yamada. Her character starts off as a considerate yet cringy airhead who quickly got along with Ichikawa and continuously opens up to him more and more as the story progresses. As a viewer, it's hard to tell when exactly did she fall for Ichikawa. Was it when she first laid eyes on him? Or maybe when she first talked to him? Maybe when they were riding together on the bicycle? Maybe it was when she literally shouted? Or most likely, It's all of it. Every moment they spent with each other slowly brought them closer and closer to understanding one another, and somewhere along the line, they fell for each other. That's part of what I love about this series. It isn't a rehashed cliche version of the same rom-com story you've seen dozens of times before, but instead the story takes its own unique approach to explore those awkward, fuzzy and wholesome feelings of youth and romance. That's not only hard to understand as a teenager, but even harder to express as a story without falling down the same paths of tropes and cliches. This unique story needed a unique adaptation to really work as an anime. There is something so special about the way they handle this adaptation. If I had to pick an example for that statement, it's gonna have to be the scene from the end of episode 6. In the orange tinted library, as a slow melody plays in the background, Ichikawa is worried that Yamada might not show up to the library from now on, since earlier they found out that eating in the library has been officially banned. But Yamada being Yamada, she doesn't care about those kinds of rules and proceeds to eat there anyway. Soon, as the teacher is almost about to spot Yamada eating in that library, Ichikawa instinctively grabs Yamada's hand, hiding the chocolate. In that moment, the room fills up with an overglowing bright orange light. The soundtrack swells up, drawing your attention closer to the screen. The animation smooths out and slows down, almost as if time itself has frozen in that library, where only the two of them exist in their own little bubble, living at the heights of their youths. Aside from the well-written romance and comedy, or even the fact that the director of Takagi-sa is directing this anime, one of the biggest reasons the anime could actually bounce back from its initial downfall was because of the incredible soundtrack. Kensuke Ushio is probably my favorite anime composer of all time. If that name means nothing to you, then I'm sure you've at least heard of Ping Pong the Animation, Devilman Crybaby, and Chainsaw Man. Those are some of the anime that Kensuke Ushio has composed the soundtrack of. But the reason I love his music is because of his work on A Silent Voice. And it's not just me. The producer of Bokuyaba himself approached Kensuke because he loved his work on A Silent Voice, and he wanted to capture that sort of a feeling through the soundtrack for this anime. And I am glad to say that the soundtrack is one of the biggest reasons that this anime could redeem itself. If by some chance the soundtrack fails to captivate you, there will still be something special to take away from this anime regardless of whether you like the rom-com genre or not. There wasn't a single turning point that got the anime a sudden push in the ratings, but instead, much like the story, it was a slow burner that grew on people. With each episode, you could find something extra to care about. Maybe it's the increasing complexity of the characters, a bright and colorful moment that sparkles through the screen, or maybe a blend of those carefully placed elements like the warm colors and the beautiful soundtrack, or a silly little moment that reminds you of your past self that makes you care all the more about the anime as you find yourself immersed in the everyday lives of a couple of awkward but wholesome idiots. This anime had some of the best animation for a rom-com, some crispy voice acting, an opening song that I am absolutely addicted to, a lot of genuinely great romance scenes, and an incredible soundtrack that ties it all together. And yet it still suffered terribly because of just how weak the first few episodes were. But those problems were quickly overshadowed by everything that came after it, and in turn, The Dangers in My Heart jumped over 3,000 places in rankings from its first episode to its final episode. And yet I'm still out here arguing that it's an underrated anime. So at least that should tell you something about just how progressively great the story gets. This anime might not make you laugh like Kaguya-sama does. This anime does not have the complexity in plot or characters like Toradora does. But what this anime excels at is providing a uniquely amazing experience of an anime. Every time the end card title that starts with Karte comes on, you know shit's about to go down. And I don't know why it always makes me smile from year to year. I love myself some underdog stories. And to see something you cared about get thrown down into the dumps, only to make its way back up from the bottom is incredibly satisfying. Watch the anime if you haven't already, and subscribe if you haven't already. That's it, thanks for watching.